Coming to the history of SQL Server. In 1989, Microsoft and Sybase jointly released its first version of SQL Server 1. It was designed for the IBM OS by 2 platform with 16-bit architecture. At early 1900s, Microsoft and Sybase began to develop a new version of SQL Server for the NT platform. During it was under development, Microsoft decided that SQL Server should be tightly coupled with the NT operating system. In 1992, Microsoft assumed core responsibility for the future of SQL Server for NT. In 1993, Windows NT 3.1 and SQL Server 4.2 for NT were released. Microsoft's viewpoint to introduce a high performance database with user friendly interface proved to be very successful. Microsoft quickly became the second most popular vendor of a high end relational database software. In 1993, Microsoft and Sybase formally parted their partnership. In 1995, Microsoft released its first version of SQL Server independent of Sybase. This release was a major rewrite of SQL Server's core technology. Version 6 significantly improved performance, provided built in replication, and delivered centralized administration. In 1996, Microsoft released version 6.5 of SQL Server. This version brought significant enhancements to the existing technology and provided several new features. In 1997, Microsoft released version 6.5 edition. In 1998, Microsoft released version 7 of SQL Server, which was a complete rewrite of the database engine. In 2000, Microsoft released SQL Server 2000, and version 2000 is Microsoft's most significant release of SQL Server to date. The version further builds upon SQL Server 7 framework. The SQL Server 2000 included more modification and extensions to the Sybase code base, adding support for IA64 architecture. Only SQL Server Relational Engine and SQL Agent were ported to the Itanium at the time. Client tools like Enterprise Manager would still be running on 32-bit x86 clients. SQL Server 2000 included SSAS, RS, and IS. SQL 2005, released in November 2005, introductory codename Yukon. SQL Server 2005 included newly XML data types CLR, TDS, MARS, DMVs, snapshot isolation level, and SSMS client tool. Concept of SQL OS was also introduced. With the release of Service Pack 1 of SQL Server 2005, database mirroring was introduced as a high availability option that provided redundancy and failover capabilities at database level. Database mirroring was included in the first release of 2005 for evolution purposes only, which was later on released as a full-fledged service from Service Pack 1. SQL Server 2008 released in August 2008 and formal code name Katmai. It was introduced It introduced some new features like spatial data types, file stream, TDE, database commandlet PowerShell, and incorporated PowerShell in SSMS, and IntelliSense for query building. 2008 R2 released in April 2010 and the formal code name Kilimanjaro. There were some major upgrades in the BI toolbelt and backup compression was available in all versions of R2 except Express. Microsoft announced the next version of SQL Server codenamed Denali. It was released to manufacturing on March 2012. SQL Server 2012's new features and enhancements included SQL Server always-on failover clustering instances, availability groups, which provided a set of options to improve database availability. Newly introduced contained databases, which simplified the moving of databases between instances. New and modified dynamic management views and functions, performance enhancements such as column store indexes, as well as improvements to security by provisioning new server roles. SQL 2014 was released to manufacturing in March 2014 with codename Hackathon. SQL 2014 provided a new in-memory capability for tables that can fit entirely into memory. For disk-based SQL Server application, it also provided SSD buffer pool extension, which improved performance by cache between RAM and the spinning media. SQL Server 2014 also enhanced the always-on solution by increasing the readable secondaries count and sustaining read operations. It provided a new hybrid disaster recovery and backup solution with Azure, enabling customers to use existing skills with on-prem version of SQL Server to take advantage of Microsoft's global data center like Azure. SQL Server 2016 is the most recent version available. The official general availability release date of 2016 was June 2016. SQL Server 2016 supported only on x86 processors. It did not support x86 processors. Enhance there were some enhancements in the memory OLTP. It supported up to 2 TB of space from 256 GB. It had support for column store index enhancements for storing always on availability groups. New security features included always encrypted. When enabled, only application that had encryption key and access the encrypted sensitive data in SQL Server 2016. The key was never passed to the SQL Server. Row level security. Data access can be restricted at the engine level so users only see what is relevant to them. The latest build of SQL Server is SQL Server 2017 general availability. We will be discussing the new features for 2017 in detail in the next video.